Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you had an excellent week. I'm Robin, and this is Savor at Home number 82. Now, earlier this week, I posted a video talking about craft distilleries, all the craft distilleries that are in the US. So today, what I'm tasting is some spirits produced by a craft distillery. This is actually a brandy distillery that's in Louisville, Kentucky, of all places. So in the bourbon capital of the world, we have this craft brandy distillery, and it is quite lovely. If you don't know what brandy distillery that I'm referring to in Louisville, Kentucky, it is Copper Kings, and I will be tasting two different single barrel expressions from the Copper Kings Distillery. And if you're not familiar with brandy, the distilled spirits category at all, simply put, brandy is just distilled wine. It doesn't have to be made from wine grapes. It can be made from all different fruits, and Copper Kings produces brandies using both grapes and apples. The grapes used for their brandies are sourced from the Central Valley and Central Coast in California, and the apples that they use for their apple brandies are sourced from Michigan. Every year they do release a Kentucky-grown grape varietal brandy. So Copper Kings is located in Louisville, Butchertown to be exact, and they were founded in 2014. About a year and a half ago, they were acquired by Constellation Brands that also owns distilleries like High West. Copper Kings uses these beautiful stills for their distillations. They have these big, beautiful Vendome copper pot stills that are all named after, I believe, women in Bob Dylan songs. There is Isis, Magdalena, and Sarah. And that's not the only aspect of the distillery that is music influenced. The way they mature all of their brandies is using sonic maturation. They blast heavy bass music in their basement where they age all of their casks. They're not the only distillery that does this, and maybe it has an influence on the way the casks age. But anyways, it's a cool little aspect of what they do during their production process. Okay, so let's talk about these two bottles that I will be tasting from. First, I'm going to be tasting Crafted. This is their grape brandy that is finished in a Wilderness Trail barrel. It is bottled at 124 proof, so these are all bottled at cask strength, which is 62% ABV, so quite a high proof spirit. Next, what I'll be trying is called Cowboy Songs. The label might look a little bit familiar. This is definitely in the style of High West, which I said is also owned by Constellation Brands. But this is the Copper Kings grape brandy that's finished in a High West Rye barrel. So hence the High West looking label. This one is bottled at 115 proof or 57.5% ABV. I picked up both of these bottles when I was in Kentucky in the fall, and I did one of their distillery tours. It was their barrel to bottle distillery tour where you got to taste a bunch of different expressions directly out of the barrel. And then if you wanted to, you could take home your own bottle that you get to bottle yourself directly out of the barrel. A fun little note about Copper Kings is that they do value sustainability, and if you bike to the distillery for a tour, they give you 50% off of your tour price. Before I dive into tasting both of these, I want to give a huge shout out to the Patreons. Thank you guys so much for helping to support the channel and for being a part of the neat community that we have over on Patreon. If you, the viewer, would like to join us over on Patreon, I've got a link in the description below. Now let's dive in. I'm going to start with Crafted. So the color of both of these are about the same. It's got a rich caramel color, a nice dark caramel color. And there's definitely some alcohol heat on the nose. It's expected for something that's 62% ABV. But right away, I get some citrus and floral notes. It does almost come across as like an orange blossom. There's notes of toffee and caramel. And there's some gentle spices in here. There's some cinnamon and just a hint of star anise. There's definitely some vanilla and a little bit of like a brown butter thing, but maybe brown butter mixed with brown sugar. There's some fruitiness too. There's some prunes and some golden raisins, and without sounding obvious, it's a little bit of like a green grape thing too. That's delicious. Okay, so right off the bat, there's definitely some heat. Again, it's 62% ABV, but yeah, there is some heat. And once that subsides, wow, I'm salivating. Once that subsides, it builds into a really, really silky mouthfeel. The mouthfeel is lovely. And then you get hit with all these flavors of different jams. There is fig jam and orange marmalade and some strawberry preserves. There's chocolate covered hazelnuts and caramel with a little bit of clove. And the finish is like some orange peel along with some grapefruit notes. It's very nice. I'm really enjoying that today. So let's move on to cowboy songs. Again, this one has that dark, rich caramel color to it. And immediately I'm already getting some spicy herbal notes. So the rye barrel influence is definitely coming through. There's some dried citrus peel. This one's floral as well, but it's a different type of flower, maybe like a jasmine. There's some butterscotch and some dark dried fruits. There's figs and prunes, yeah. There's also some like maraschino cherries, a little bit of licorice, and some maple. That's also quite lovely. There's a little bit less heat, but I am still getting some full tongue tingles. This takes a little bit more time to build up that creaminess, but it is still there and present. I'm getting more fruity notes on the palate. It's more like apple juice and dried figs. I'm getting a little bit of like a custardy dessert thing. And there's a lot more spice. There's definitely that rye spice coming through. Cinnamon, cloves, allspice as well. And there's some candied orange peel. Overall, I think these are both really enjoyable. I was super happy that we stopped in at Copper Kings. This was part of the bourbon chase tour that I did with some of the NEAT members. After doing a couple of bourbon distillery tours, we popped over to Copper Kings. I wanted to do that to show the NEAT members that their palates are more than just there for tasting whiskeys, right? This also translates over into other distilled spirits, such as brandies. And I think these brandies are really good entry-level brandies for those who are whiskey fans and haven't really dabbled in the brandy world. I would highly suggest checking out Copper Kings. If you're in Louisville, 100% check out their barrel to bottle tour or just pop in for a normal tour. I think each bottle cost about $60 to $65, and I'd say definitely worth the price. I find that sometimes when you're in the environment of doing a tasting at a distillery, the spirits that you're tasting can sometimes taste better at that distillery or at that tasting or whatever environment you're in because of the surrounding environment. You know, you have reps around or tour guides around and they're hyping up what you're tasting. And sometimes when you bring those bottles home, they don't taste as great as what you remembered. That's not the case with these two. So again, highly recommend checking out Copper Kings. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And I know Jerry didn't join me on this Savor at Home tasting. I asked him if he wanted to, and he said no. He wanted to make sure that every appearance he made on the channel was special, so he didn't want to overdo it. Now, next week is his birthday, and I would like to peer pressure him to do a tasting, a Savor at Home tasting next week. So make sure to drop a comment below and let him know that you're also looking forward to that tasting. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Wilderness Trail Barrel. That's a tongue twister.